In today's video, I'll be going through the 2025 gubernatorial elections in the states of Virginia and New Jersey. I'm going to start off here with the state of Virginia because there's a little bit more clarity there, and then move to the state of New Jersey where the results and the candidates are a little bit more obscure. So let's start off here with the state of Virginia. In the state of Virginia, the incumbent governor in Virginia is Glenn Youngkin. He's a first-term Republican elected in 2021 by about a 2% margin. Now, the Virginia Constitution prohibits governors from quote-unquote serving consecutive terms, so essentially no governor can run for 2 consecutive elections. Therefore, Glenn Youngkin is essentially ineligible to run. He may end up running for Senate. On the Republican side here, we have currently 2 declared candidates and someone who has publicly expressed interest. Now, it's still not clear who will be the Republican nominee. There could be some other candidates entering the race. However, right now, it does look like Winsome Sears, the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, will end up winning this Republican primary. In 2021 here, she essentially ran on par with Glenn Youngkin for the lieutenant governor spot. She ran about 15,000 votes behind Glenn Youngkin, but that was still enough for her to win. She is a female of color, which could help her with the minority vote. Now, there's another candidate here running for the Republican primary, but this is not someone who is very well known. Amanda Chase could perhaps put up a strong challenge. That was because she was actually able to get about 45% of the Republican Party to her side back in 2021, where she unsuccessfully ran for governor against Glenn Youngkin. She got 45% of the Republican primary vote though, so that was pretty good. Nevertheless here, because Winsome Sears probably the person who's most well known in Virginia as lieutenant governor and someone who has Glenn Youngkin's endorsement, and Glenn Youngkin, by the way, did quite well in 2021 as we all know, it's probably going to be Winsome Sears as the Republican, as you can see in polling, though that could change because it's still too early to tell, and gubernatorial races, specifically in primaries, could be quite volatile, especially because Glenn Youngkin, when he first announced, he was only polling at like 5%, and at the end of the election, we saw that he was actually the Republican nominee. Now for a Democratic primary here, so far there hasn't been anyone, besides Abigail Spanberger, who has essentially announced her candidacy. Bobby Scott has publicly expressed interest, but I think Spanberger will be the nominee. She definitely has the most endorsements. She has the endorsement from Tim Kaine, who of course we all know the VP candidate under Hillary Clinton in 2016, and he's someone who's pretty well respected across the state. We have a few U.S. representatives who have endorsed Abigail Spanberger, and we see a few organizations, Emily List, pretty powerful in the Democratic Party, and Citizens United, these super PACs and stuff. Bobby Scott not declared. Someone did end up endorsing him. However, it's not something that's super significant, only one endorsement. LeVar Stoney, this is kind of why I believe that Abigail Spanberger will win, because Stoney knew that he had no chance against Spanberger. If he withdrew and he already had some of these endorsements, especially from some people like Terry McAuliffe, who are pretty powerful in the state of Virginia, a former governor of Virginia, it does not seem like anyone could really stop Abigail Spanberger. In terms of her electability, we can look to 2020 and 2022. In 2020, Biden won Virginia by about 10% and ran about even, I would say, against Donald Trump in Abigail Spanberger's district. What we saw is that Spanberger won re-election by just under 2%. She was able to run a little bit ahead of Joe Biden. For example, Louisa County here, that was 60.2 to 39.8. Go to 2020 president, that was 60.7 to 37.7, so a little bit over 2% better for Abigail Spanberger as opposed to Joe Biden. You can look at Powhatan County in District 7. Abigail Spanberger got 49.3%. She got clobbered in that county. However, we saw that Donald Trump did a bit better than the Republican nominee against Spanberger in that particular county. So what I ultimately think that this race will come down to is essentially the national environment, because the Democratic candidate, the Republican candidate, both held public office, one as lieutenant governor, one as a representative. It will come down to the national environment. But that's a point in the Democratic Party's favor, and why I think Democrats will win this race. Historically, in the state of Virginia, the gubernatorial race always goes to the party who is not the incumbent presidential party. In 2021 here, Biden was the president and went to Republican Glenn Youngkin. 2017, Donald Trump was the president and went to Democrat Ralph Northam. 2013 was the exception. Terry McAuliffe narrowly defeated the Republican there by about 50,000 votes, although Obama was the president. In 2009 here, Bob McConnell, the Republican, was able to win when Obama was in his first term. In 2005, Tim Kaine was able to win when Bush was in his second term. Mark Warner was able to win in 2001 with George W. Bush as the president, so on and so forth. That type of pattern continues up until the 1980s, where the incumbent party always loses the state of Virginia with the exception of 2013. Furthermore, you saw that Abigail Spanberger retired from the House to run for governor, meaning that she's probably quite confident that she could win this race. After all, she wouldn't really retire from her House of Representatives position. As a result here, I do believe at this point in time, given that Donald Trump is the president, given that there's this historical precedent, and also that Abigail Spanberger is quite confident, polling is also, I believe, in Spanberger's favor. If you look at polling here, not the Democratic primary, general election, Spanberger has a narrow advantage. There's still a lot of undecideds, but I do have to say right now I'm going to give it to Spanberger probably by about a lead margin. Virginia gubernatorial elections are always competitive. Nevertheless, I would say that Spanberger is the favored. Now we can go to the New Jersey gubernatorial elections. Now in 2021 here, Phil Murphy, the incumbent governor from New Jersey, who is term limited, had a fight for his life. This race was not expected to be competitive. Phil Murphy was expected to win by between 10 to 20%, but instead this race was decided by a margin of 3.3%. The close gubernatorial election results in New Jersey were particularly surprising because Biden was able to win the state by nearly 16 percentage points. However, 2021 was not just an isolated example, where you saw Phil Murphy underperform, especially in the southern part of the state. For example, in Cumberland County, Phil Murphy lost the county by 12 against Jack Ciattarelli. However, Biden was able to win the county by about 6%, meaning the county shifted about 17% more Republican in just 1 year. In 2024, Democrats also significantly underperformed in New Jersey. You can really see that underperformance in some of the more urban/suburban areas. Passaic County is a great example. Donald Trump won the county by 3% against Kamala Harris, despite the fact that Biden had won the county just, I believe, 4 years ago by a margin of 16.5%. Again, that's almost a 20% shift in a term of just 4 years. Another good example is Hudson County. Biden won the county by 46. However, Kamala Harris only won the county by 28. That is, again, an 80% underperformance for Kamala Harris compared to 2020 with Joe Biden. So New Jersey is definitely considered more of a competitive state, and of course voters are willing to vote split ticket on the gubernatorial level, more so than the Senate level and the federal level. Therefore, the state of New Jersey could be considered competitive. There's a lot of undecided factors here in the state of New Jersey. We currently do not have any polls for the general election, though we do see that Cook Political does put this race as lean Democratic. On the Democratic side, there's not a lot of certainty. If you look at all these endorsements here, right, I don't know a lot of these candidates. You see all these people, you see a lot of endorsements for all of these candidates. And if you look at the Democratic primary, essentially, Mike Sherrill is currently at the best numbers. He's at 25% in the most recent poll. However, there's a sizable number of voters who are undecided, ranging from 29% to 45%. And also, if you look at Mike Sherrill here, he doesn't even have a single endorsement from the county chairs. You see that Tom Sweeney, I believe, has the most, Stephen Sweeney has the most endorsements, but he's polling quite poorly. Josh Gottenheimer, I believe, had a lot of potential previously, but now he's not doing so well in polling, so there's a lot of undecideds, and we're not quite sure who's going to win yet. On the Republican side, though, you can look at this. Jack Ciattarelli, the gubernatorial candidate on the Republican side, who essentially had no chance to win in 2021. This time round, he's rejuvenated. He's running again in 2025. In the Republican primary here, we see again a pretty packed Republican primary because now Republicans believe they actually have a shot of winning the gubernatorial race. You see a lot of endorsements here, and generally, there's again a lot of random endorsements by the county chairs. Essentially, the favorite son candidates, the candidates who were born in those counties, generally got the endorsements, though Chitterelli is polling far ahead of any other Republican candidates. But that being said, this is early in the race. Chitterelli's name is most well known compared to some of the other candidates, and there's a sizable number of undecided voters. So Chitterelli could still lose the Republican primary, given that there's a lot of people who have endorsed other candidates, potentially testifying to the fact that other candidates may have a shot. That being said, I still believe that Jack Chitterelli is probably the favorite to win this race. Again, if you look at hypothetical polling, there has been none, though the lean Democratic ranking has been assigned by the Cook Political Report. That being said, again, we shouldn't trust these predictions that much. In 2021, this was not expected to be competitive. If you look at the ratings here, solid D, likely D. Likely D was the most competitive. We had 2 solid Ds, and even then the race was super competitive. Phil Murphy only won by 3.2%. Even at 75% of the vote reported, Chitterelli was still ahead. So this race I think will be quite interesting. There's still a lot of uncertain / undecided variables. I'm not confident to say who will end up winning this race. It does depend on the national environment and whether Trump has a good first 200 days in office. Ultimately though, given that New Jersey still has its Democratic DNA, and this is a year when the incumbent president is a Republican, Donald Trump, I would have to give this race here as leaning towards the Democratic Party. So that does it. I have Virginia and New Jersey in the lean Democratic column. Do you agree with my projections? Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Goodbye.